Before I blew up my life and ended up going to prison, I would not have hesitated to say that I was a good person. In fact, I probably would have been so confident that I wouldn't have even needed to say it. I would have just assumed that it was obvious. Like a lot of people, I had spent much of my life pushing forward the good parts of myself, shining myself up, making sure that my hair was combed when I went out the door, making sure that I was showing the world my best qualities, my generosity, my kindness, my trustworthiness, my integrity. And I wasn't even doing this consciously. It was just how life was. It kind of seemed like that was what everybody was doing, and I did it too, and I didn't really even notice or pay much attention to what might be called the darker parts of myself. But life has a way of showing us, doesn't it? One way or another, the parts of us that we try to hide in the basement or keep in the back burner, or keep behind a smile or whatever, they begin to get exposed. When you go into prison, you get strip searched, and they're looking for drugs or contraband or weapons. But the stripping away was much deeper than that for me. And in fact, that stripping away had started long before I got to prison. I had come face to face with the fact that I had lied to people, flat out lied to people. I had been selfish in asking for things that served a project that I was committed to. And of course, I thought everyone was going to be repaid and everything was going to work out. But I was not keeping other people's best interest in mind. I was not being truthful. I was not acting in integrity. And, the thing about being convicted of fraud is you kind of have to take a hard look at yourself. And it was pretty shocking to find what was hidden under the surface of that nice guy, Mac Parker. Maybe the biggest thing was this kind of pervasive anxiety. No matter how good I had tried to be, no matter how successful I had been as a performer or as an athlete or as a writer or as whatever I took on, there was always this anxiety that followed me. I would walk away from a performance in which I had gotten a standing ovation, and 5 minutes later, as I was driving home, the anxiety or the voices inside my head would be already gnawing on me, eating away at whatever peace or self-satisfaction that applause might have brought. And being in prison, I had a lot of time to sit and to look at how someone who had always called himself an honest person and always truly believed that I was an honest person had lied to so many people. So easily. Sure, all in the name of something that would work out ultimately and everything would be fine. But the truth was that I had lied. And there was no putting Humpty together again. Once you've lied, once you've been exposed as a fraud, you can pretend, but other people and life itself isn't really going to cooperate with that pretending very much any longer. So I sat in prison and I looked. I sat in meditation. I sat quietly. I lay flat on my hard bunk bed and felt into everything that I had done, everything that I was, everything that I felt inside of me. There was plenty of time in prison for all of it to come up. There was plenty of space to look at the things that I had pretty studiously not looked at for most of my life before that time. And it was in prison that I began to feel the relief of this. I was a convict. Nobody in prison expected me to be anything but a convict. I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to be good. I didn't have to be nice. I didn't have to be anything but what I was. And strangely, and increasingly over time, I found myself becoming more and more comfortable in this bigger picture of what I actually was. Not what I had pretended to be, not what I had tried to convince everyone in the world that I was, but what I actually was. And I began to think of this as, if you think of a full circle, if you have half a circle, you call that the 180 degrees. And that's how I had lived before, and how I began to see that many of us live. We're trying desperately to keep our life contained to the 180 that we call the positive, or the good stuff, or our better nature, or whatever you want to call it. And I had fallen into that trap as much as anyone, and even believed that that was right. But what I began to see in this kind of enforced self-reflection was that I wasn't just the good stuff. I could be a real jerk. I could be really selfish. I could be mean. I could be cutting. I could cut someone down just if I was in a bad mood, or if they did something that triggered me or crossed me in the wrong way. And I had committed fraud. I had lied to hundreds of people about really consequential things in their life. Could I live with that? What was this 180 that I had been trying to avoid? Whatever you want to call it, the dark side, the nasty stuff, the shadow, the things we try to bury, the things we despise about ourselves and each other, the things we've done that hurt people. Could I live with that? Could I be okay? And to my surprise, I found myself often sitting in my little plastic chair in prison and just kind of feeling more and more okay with the full 360 of what I was, what I am, and what life is. I wasn't trying, or at least I wasn't trying as much to just show the good stuff, to impress people, to make them like me, whatever. And I began to explore this more and more deeply. I felt into this fear. It wasn't fear of being in prison. It wasn't even fear of anything particular. It was like this existential fear that was throughout my body, that had been chasing me my whole life and had made me, I don't know, fear of not being good enough, fear of being exposed as a fraud, which is ironic because Ultimately, I was exposed as a fraud. Fear, a gnawing, dense, heavy feeling right down in my belly. And I felt that fear. And I felt it, and I stayed with it. And I asked what it was, and I asked what it might need from me. And I just let it be the way it was. When I got mad in prison, I got mad. I just let myself get mad. After years of repressing that. And the more I opened to that full 360 of everything I wasn't consumed by the bad stuff, so-called bad stuff. It didn't make me badder. It didn't make me more afraid or more angry or more mean. In fact, the more I opened to everything that was there, the more everything seemed to soften. I wasn't just a good person. I was just a person. I was everything. I was that fear. I was that person who had lied almost casually to people. I was that person who could be mean. I was that person who, with a sharp voice, who could cut people down. I was all of those things. And because I allowed myself to feel them, I didn't become more like that. I didn't get worse. If anything, I got softer. I got kinder. I got less anxious and more peaceful. There was nothing fast or dramatic about this. It was a very slow evolution. A lot of deep breaths. A lot of lying on my bunk when we were on lockdown for a Christmas party or because there'd been a fight on the compound or whatever. A lot of just lying on my bunk and feeling whatever came up inside me, whatever it was. And more I learned not to push anything away, to let it all be there. Whatever it was, to make space for it, to let it come out, to let it unwind. And I found that the more I could do this with myself, the more I could do it with other people. The more space I could allow other people to be a jerk, to be mean, to be depressed, to be afraid. And I spend a lot of time thinking about this. 180 and 360 way of looking at life. The urgency, the fear of trying to stay in that 180 and not let the dark side of us leak out. I'm going to be a good person, the power of positive thinking. I'm just going to be good. I'm going to think positive thoughts. I'm going to be positive. And until you almost make yourself crazy. Until you definitely turn yourself into a fake. Because life isn't 180, life is 360. It's all of us. It's the shame that I sat with of this foolishness of being human. Not just my being human, but of all of us being human, of the human condition, of the fear of this constant nagging dread that there's something wrong with us, something we have to do to fix it, something we have to change, something we have to do to be better, to be acceptable, to be whatever. And the more I let it be there, I still enjoyed myself. It wasn't like the good parts went away. If anything, they got more relaxed. When I enjoyed myself, I simply enjoyed myself. I played softball in prison like a kid. I had a blast. I enjoyed it. And when I was depressed or when I was angry, I let that happen. And I began to live, to find myself and to allow myself the whole 360 of my experience. And once you've done that, you see how frantically most of us are trying to stay in that 180, the good version of ourselves, and the toll that that takes on us. So if you're listening to this, consider this my invitation. Maybe you don't have to go to prison to learn this. Consider this an invitation to open to the parts of yourself that are hard for you to accept. Your temper, your promiscuity, your shame, your jealousy, your fear, whatever it is, to open to that, to allow that to be here too, to bring tenderness to that, to allow yourself not just to be good, but just to be whatever you are. And then in relationship, to do that with others, to do that with the people you're close to. If someone is depressed, not to try to distract them or pull them out of it, but to really be with them in it. To be present with them. If they're angry, not to try to shut them up or make them wrong, or what the hell's the matter with you? But to let that anger flow. If they're afraid, not to look down your nose, seems a little out of scale with things, just to allow them that fear. This was the freedom that I found in prison. This is the freedom that's waiting for all of us. The simple acceptance of everything that we are. The willingness to move beyond this tight, constrained 180 version of ourselves. To find love and acceptance and tenderness for the full 360 of everything that we are and everything that all of us is and carries within us. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy this acceptance. Feel the tenderness in this and the fire within this. And enjoy sharing that tenderness and that fire with those you love and care about. Thank you for listening.